Jesus says, "Do not ignore this warning. Your soul needs this, not because something terrible is about to happen to you, but because something important within you has been quietly asking for attention, and continuing to ignore it costs you more than you may have fully recognized until this particular moment." Stay with this message. Do not close it and return immediately to whatever else was occupying your attention a moment ago. Something in you has been carrying weight, quietly, perhaps for longer than you have fully acknowledged, and this message exists to speak directly to that weight, offering honest reflection rather than empty comfort or vague, unspecific reassurance. Breathe slowly. Let your shoulders soften. Whatever has filled your attention recently, set it aside for these next several minutes, because what follows deserves genuine presence rather than the passing, distracted engagement most content receives during an ordinary day. Here is the warning this message carries, honest rather than dramatic. Your soul, whatever specific meaning that word holds for you personally, whether explicitly spiritual or simply representing your deepest, most essential self, has been asking for something you have not yet fully given it. This asking has likely shown up in specific ways, worth naming clearly rather than left as vague, unexamined spiritual language. Perhaps it has shown up as persistent restlessness, a sense that something remains unresolved even during moments that should otherwise feel content or settled. Perhaps it has shown up as exhaustion that sleep alone does not fully resolve, a deeper tiredness connected less to physical rest and more to something unaddressed within your ongoing daily life and choices. Perhaps it has shown up as a quiet but persistent longing for something more genuine, more honest, more aligned with who you actually are beneath whatever roles, expectations, and habitual patterns currently shape your daily experience. Reflect honestly on which of these, or something similar, has felt most present in your own recent experience. This particular signal, whatever specific form it takes for you, is exactly what this warning is speaking to, asking you to finally attend to it directly rather than continuing to push it aside in favor of whatever feels more immediately manageable or convenient. Take genuine time with this reflection rather than settling immediately for whatever answer first comes to mind. Sometimes multiple signals have been present simultaneously, restlessness alongside exhaustion, longing alongside a quieter sense that something essential remains unaddressed. If several of these resonate with your own experience, consider whether they might connect to one common underlying source, or whether they represent genuinely separate concerns each deserving their own particular attention moving forward. Here is something worth understanding about why this particular signal deserves genuine attention rather than continued dismissal. When something essential within you goes consistently unattended, it does not simply disappear or resolve on its own through continued neglect. It tends instead to grow quieter for periods, easier to ignore temporarily, before resurfacing again, sometimes more insistently, until it finally receives the genuine attention it has been asking for throughout. Picture a small leak in a boat, easy to overlook initially, requiring only occasional, minor bailing to manage. Left entirely unaddressed over an extended period, this same small leak tends to worsen, gradually requiring more and more attention simply to maintain the same level of functioning, until eventually it demands significant, urgent repair that could have been avoided entirely had it received proper attention much earlier, while it remained small and easily manageable. This same pattern often applies to unattended soul-level need, small and manageable initially, but tending to grow more demanding of attention the longer it continues without genuine, direct engagement. This pattern is worth taking seriously, not because ignoring it will produce some dramatic punishment, but because continued neglect of your own essential needs and longings tends to produce a specific, cumulative cost, a gradual disconnection from your own authentic experience, a growing sense of living somewhat apart from your own genuine self, even while continuing to function adequately in your daily, external circumstances. Consider how much of this cost may have already accumulated in your own particular life, energy spent maintaining distance from whatever your soul has genuinely been asking for, energy that could otherwise be directed toward genuine engagement with that asking, rather than continued avoidance of it. Here is something worth understanding about what your soul might specifically be asking for, since this message wants to move beyond vague spiritual language towards something you can actually examine honestly against your own particular life and circumstances. Often, what the deepest part of a person is asking for falls into a few common categories, worth considering honestly as you continue this reflection. Consider, too, that these categories often overlap and connect to one another in your own particular experience, rather than existing as entirely separate, isolated needs. A longing for rest may connect closely to a longing for honesty, since exhaustion sometimes stems from the effort required to maintain performance and pretense. A longing for connection may connect closely to a longing for meaning, since genuine relationship often provides much of what makes daily life feel purposeful and worthwhile. Notice whether your own particular asking involves this kind of interconnection, rather than assuming it must fit neatly into only one single, isolated category. Sometimes the soul asks for honesty, an end to specific pretense or performance that has become exhausting to maintain, whether performing confidence you do not genuinely feel, performing contentment with circumstances that genuinely trouble you, or performing agreement with expectations that do not actually align with your genuine values and desires. Sometimes the soul asks for rest, genuine relief from constant productivity and achievement, permission to simply exist without needing to continuously justify that existence through accomplishment. Sometimes the soul asks for connection, genuine, vulnerable relationship rather than the more guarded, protected interactions that may have become habitual over time. Sometimes the soul asks for meaning, a sense that your daily activities connect to something larger than simple survival or obligation, a genuine sense of purpose that feels authentically yours rather than simply inherited or expected. Reflect on which of these, or perhaps some combination, feels most relevant to your own particular soul's asking. Naming this specifically, rather than leaving it as vague spiritual longing, tends to make it significantly more workable, allowing genuine, concrete engagement rather than continued vague awareness that never quite translates into meaningful action or response. Here is something worth understanding about why this asking has likely persisted for as long as it has, rather than simply resolving itself through continued daily life and routine. Genuine soul-level needs of this kind rarely resolve themselves through simple passage of time alone. They require deliberate, conscious engagement, a genuine choice to finally attend to what has been asking for attention, rather than continuing to hope it will simply fade or resolve without any corresponding effort or engagement on your part. Consider how much your daily life has actually been structured around avoiding rather than engaging with this particular asking, whether through constant busyness that leaves no room for reflection, through habitual distraction whenever quiet moments do arise, or through simply staying so focused on external obligations that internal, essential needs rarely receive any conscious attention at all. This structure, whether consciously chosen or simply developed through habit and circumstance, has likely played a significant role in why this particular asking has persisted for as long as it genuinely has. Consider what specifically has made this particular asking so difficult to attend to directly, beyond simple busyness or distraction. Sometimes fear underlies this difficulty, fear of what genuine honesty might require you to subsequently change, fear of what genuine rest might reveal about how unsustainable your current pace of life has actually become, fear of what genuine connection might require in terms of vulnerability and potential disappointment, fear of what genuine meaning-making might require in terms of reconsidering paths and choices you have already invested significant time and energy into pursuing. Reflect honestly on whether this kind of fear has been operating beneath your own particular difficulty in attending to whatever your soul has been asking for. Naming this fear clearly, rather than experiencing it only as vague resistance, tends to make it significantly more workable, allowing genuine examination rather than simply continuing to be controlled by its presence operating quietly in the background of your ongoing avoidance. Here is something worth understanding about what genuinely attending to this warning actually requires, rather than remaining abstract spiritual language disconnected from concrete, actionable steps. If your soul has been asking for honesty, genuine attention might mean identifying one specific area where you have been performing rather than genuinely expressing yourself, and considering what a small, honest step away from that performance might actually look like in practice. Consider a specific recent instance where you noticed yourself performing rather than genuinely expressing your actual feelings or opinions, perhaps agreeing with something you did not genuinely agree with, or presenting confidence you did not genuinely feel. Naming this specific instance clearly can help translate the more general category of honesty into something concrete you can actually work with, identifying similar situations moving forward and considering, gradually, small ways to respond more authentically when they arise again. If your soul has been asking for rest, genuine attention might mean actually examining your current pace of life honestly, identifying what specifically could be released or reduced in order to create genuine space for rest, rather than continuing to treat rest as something to be earned only after every other obligation has first been fully addressed and completed. If your soul has been asking for connection, genuine attention might mean identifying one specific relationship where deeper honesty and vulnerability feels both desired and genuinely possible, and considering what a small, initial step toward that deeper connection might actually involve. If your soul has been asking for meaning, genuine attention might mean honestly examining whether your current daily activities and broader life direction genuinely align with what actually matters most to you, and considering what small, initial adjustment might begin moving you toward greater alignment between your daily life and your genuine values and sense of purpose. Here is something worth understanding about why immediate attention matters specifically now, rather than continuing to treat this particular asking as something that can reasonably wait for some more convenient future moment. This particular kind of soul-level asking rarely disappears through continued postponement. It typically persists, sometimes growing quieter for periods before resurfacing again, until it finally receives the genuine attention it deserves. Consider what specifically might be lost through continued postponement, beyond the general exhaustion and disconnection already discussed throughout this reflection. Time itself, the specific days and weeks that continue passing while this asking remains unattended, time that cannot later be reclaimed or lived differently regardless of how much genuine intention you eventually bring toward addressing it. This is not meant to generate panic, but simply honest recognition that continued postponement carries a genuine, if easily overlooked, cost measured in actual, irreplaceable time. Consider how many times something resembling this current moment of recognition may have already occurred in your own life regarding this same underlying asking, moments of clarity that arose and then faded again once ordinary daily demands reclaimed your attention. If this pattern of repeated recognition followed by repeated postponement has already occurred multiple times, this message's emphasis on urgency deserves genuine consideration rather than dismissal, recognizing that patterns of this kind typically require deliberate, conscious interruption rather than simply continuing to hope for eventual, effortless resolution. Here is something worth understanding about self-compassion as you continue engaging with this particular warning, since harsh self-criticism regarding how long this particular asking has gone unattended tends to work against genuine engagement rather than supporting it effectively. Most people carry some version of unattended soul-level need, having learned, often through understandable circumstances, to prioritize external obligation and expectation over internal, essential need and longing. Approach yourself with genuine compassion regarding this pattern, recognizing that prioritizing external demands over internal need is an extremely common human pattern, rather than any particular personal failing unique to you. This compassion does not mean continuing to avoid genuine attention indefinitely. It simply means approaching the process of finally attending to your soul's asking with kindness rather than harsh self-judgment, recognizing that this kind of gentle, compassionate approach tends to support genuine, sustained engagement considerably more effectively than continued self-criticism ever manages to achieve. Here is something worth understanding about the specific role that daily life structure plays in either supporting or preventing this kind of genuine soul-level attention, since the ordinary demands and pace of modern daily life often leave very little natural space for exactly this kind of reflective attention this message has been encouraging throughout its content. Consider whether your own current daily structure allows for any genuine space of this kind, or whether it has become so consistently full that soul-level attention has been quietly crowded out entirely by more immediate, practical demands and obligations. If genuine space for this kind of attention feels largely absent from your current daily structure, consider what small, deliberate adjustment might begin creating that space, even if only a few minutes each day initially, dedicated specifically to checking in honestly with whatever your soul has been asking for, rather than continuing to fill every available moment with external obligation and distraction that leaves no genuine room for this kind of essential, internal attention and reflection. Here is something worth understanding about doubt, since doubt likely has arisen at some point during this reflection, questioning whether this message's central claim genuinely applies to your own specific situation, or whether it simply represents generic spiritual encouragement offered broadly without genuine connection to your particular circumstances. This doubt deserves honest acknowledgement rather than automatic dismissal, though it also deserves genuine examination rather than uncritical acceptance as necessarily representing the complete truth of the matter. Consider whether your own doubt reflects genuine, careful evaluation concluding that no significant matter genuinely applies to your current circumstances, or whether it reflects something else, perhaps the very avoidance pattern this message has been describing throughout, manifesting specifically as skepticism toward the message itself rather than genuine, honest engagement with whatever your own soul might actually be asking for at this particular time. Here is a further consideration worth holding as you continue engaging with whatever this reflection has helped you identify. This message is not asking you to abandon reasonable judgment or careful, honest self-examination in favor of uncritical acceptance of whatever spiritual claims happen to be presented to you. It is simply inviting genuine reflection on whether something within you has indeed been asking for attention, deserving more serious consideration than the passing dismissal it has likely received up until this particular moment of reflection. Consider what it would mean to hold both healthy, appropriate skepticism and genuine openness simultaneously, rather than assuming these two orientations must necessarily conflict with or exclude one another. Healthy skepticism protects against naive, uncritical acceptance of claims that may not genuinely apply to your actual circumstances. Genuine openness protects against dismissing something potentially significant simply because it arrives wrapped in explicitly spiritual language that your particular worldview may not automatically embrace or prioritize. Here is something worth understanding about what genuinely changes once your soul's asking finally receives genuine attention, benefits that extend considerably beyond simply feeling pleasant in any single given moment. Many people report a specific kind of relief following this kind of genuine attention, a sense of coming back into alignment with themselves, a reduction in the subtle but persistent exhaustion that comes from continued disconnection between external life and internal, essential need and longing. Consider what this particular kind of relief might genuinely feel like for you personally, imagining, as specifically as you genuinely can, what it might mean to finally attend honestly to whatever your soul has been asking for throughout this particular period of your life. Notice whatever sense of lightness or genuine longing this imagined scenario produces, evidence that some part of you already recognizes the genuine value of finally engaging with this particular asking rather than continuing the pattern of postponement that has likely characterized your relationship with it until now. Here is something worth understanding about the specific timeline this kind of genuine attention and integration typically requires, since unrealistic expectations regarding how quickly this kind of deep, internal shift typically occurs often lead to premature discouragement and abandonment of what would otherwise prove to be genuinely valuable, ongoing engagement. Genuine soul-level realignment, particularly for needs or longings that have gone unattended for an extended period, typically unfolds gradually over weeks or months, rather than resolving completely within a single reflection, however meaningful that reflection genuinely proves to be. This does not diminish the genuine significance of what this particular reflection has already accomplished. Beginning is itself significant, often the most difficult part of this kind of genuine, internal process, the moment where avoidance finally gives way to honest, gentle engagement with whatever has been asking for attention for far too long. Trust that this beginning matters, even while holding realistic expectations about the continued time and patience the fuller process of integration will likely require moving forward. Consider the specific role that community and shared reflection might play as you continue attending to your soul's genuine needs beyond today, since this kind of internal work often deepens and clarifies through being shared, at least partially, with others who understand or value this same kind of reflective attention. If a specific community, whether formal or informal, whether explicitly spiritual or simply a group of people who value genuine, honest reflection, exists or could exist in your own particular life, consider whether connecting more intentionally with that community might offer valuable additional support beyond what individual reflection alone can fully provide. Reflect, too, on what specific role rest and stillness might play in your capacity to genuinely hear what your soul continues asking for, since constant activity and stimulation tend to drown out exactly the kind of quiet, internal signal this message has been describing throughout its content. If your daily life has become consistently filled with activity and stimulation, leaving little genuine space for quiet, reflective stillness, consider what small adjustment might create more room for this kind of essential quiet, even if only a few minutes at specific points throughout your day. Examine what specific role your relationship with your own body plays in this process, since the soul's asking often manifests physically as well as psychologically, sometimes appearing as tension, fatigue, or other physical signals that reflect emotional or spiritual material asking for attention. If you have noticed physical symptoms alongside the restlessness or longing already discussed throughout this reflection, consider whether these physical signals might connect to the same underlying asking, deserving genuine, gentle attention rather than being treated as entirely separate or unrelated concerns. Consider what specific creative practices might help you process and express whatever your soul has been asking for, whether writing, art, music, movement, or any other form of genuine expression that feels accessible and meaningful to you personally. Sometimes the soul's asking finds its clearest expression not through direct, verbal articulation, but through creative practice that bypasses purely rational, analytical processing in favor of something more intuitive and embodied. Reflect, as well, on what specific role your relationship with time plays in either supporting or preventing genuine attention to your soul's needs, since a life lived at consistently rushed, hurried pace often leaves little natural space for the kind of unhurried, reflective attention this particular process typically requires. Consider what small adjustment to your relationship with time, even simply slowing down slightly during specific, chosen moments throughout your day, might create more genuine space for the kind of attention this message has been encouraging throughout its content. Here is a final significant consideration before this message moves toward its close. This warning, however direct its language has been throughout this reflection, has not arrived to frighten you or generate anxious urgency disconnected from genuine, gentle care. It has arrived because your soul, whatever specific meaning that word holds for you personally, genuinely deserves attention, genuinely deserves to be heard rather than continuing to be quietly overridden by whatever external demands and expectations currently claim most of your daily attention and energy. Release whatever shame or self-criticism might have accumulated regarding how long this particular asking has gone unattended. Shame does not accelerate genuine engagement. It simply adds unnecessary additional weight on top of whatever difficulty already exists in finally attending to this particular need. Approach this moment instead with genuine self-compassion, recognizing that this pattern of prioritizing external demand over internal need is extremely common, alongside genuine readiness to finally respond differently than you have responded to similar previous opportunities for genuine, internal attention and care. Before this message reaches its true close, take one final moment for yourself, genuinely absorbing what has emerged throughout this reflection rather than rushing immediately toward whatever comes next in your day. Name, specifically, what your soul has actually been asking for throughout this particular period of your life. Name, specifically, one small, concrete step you might take within the next day, beginning to genuinely attend to this particular asking rather than continuing the pattern of postponement that has likely characterized your relationship with it until now. This does not need to feel dramatic or overwhelming in order to matter significantly. It simply needs to feel genuine, honest engagement with whatever this reflection has helped illuminate, rather than either dismissing this content entirely or attempting too much too quickly without adequate patience or preparation for this kind of genuine, ongoing internal work. Trust that this particular message reached you today for a genuine reason, connecting specifically to something real and present within your own actual soul and experience, rather than arriving randomly or without any genuine relevance to your particular circumstances. Something in you recognized enough significance to continue reading this far, past the point where you might have dismissed this message entirely had it genuinely carried no connection to anything real currently present within your own life and inner experience. Consider, too, what it might mean to continue checking in with your soul's genuine needs and longings beyond today, developing a consistent, ongoing practice of honest reflection rather than allowing this single moment of recognition to fade quickly back into the pattern of neglect that has likely characterized your relationship with this particular asking until now. Perhaps setting aside a few minutes each day, or each week, for genuine, honest check-in with yourself, asking simply what your soul might currently be needing, rather than continuing to move through your daily life without this kind of consistent, deliberate internal attention. Reflect, as well, on how you will handle the inevitable moments when this particular attention feels harder to access or maintain, moments when the ordinary demands and busyness of daily life once again threaten to crowd out this kind of essential, internal reflection. These moments do not indicate failure. They simply reflect the ongoing effort genuine, sustained internal attention typically requires, particularly within a broader daily life and culture that often does not naturally prioritize or support this kind of reflective practice. Consider what specific support might help you sustain this practice beyond today, whether through a trusted person capable of offering genuine understanding and encouragement, a specific spiritual or reflective community aligned with your own particular worldview and values, or simply a consistent personal practice maintained with genuine discipline and care over an extended period of time. There is one more layer worth adding before this message truly comes to its close, something practical that ties everything shared today into sustained, meaningful engagement over the coming weeks and months ahead, ensuring this reflection actually translates into a genuinely different, more attentive relationship with your own soul's ongoing needs rather than remaining simply another moment of temporary insight quickly forgotten once ordinary daily demands reassert their usual claim on your attention. Consider what specific weekly practice might help you maintain honest, ongoing engagement with whatever your soul continues asking for, something brief and sustainable rather than elaborate and likely to be abandoned once initial motivation naturally diminishes over time. Perhaps a specific day each week dedicated to genuine, quiet reflection, checking in honestly with whatever internal signals have been present, adjusting your approach as needed based on what that regular reflection reveals over time. Reflect on what specific milestones might help you track meaningful progress over the coming months, milestones specific enough to provide genuine, concrete evidence of movement, rather than vague, general hopes that remain difficult to measure or genuinely assess. Perhaps a specific relationship where deeper honesty has genuinely begun developing. Perhaps a specific pattern of overwork that has genuinely begun shifting toward more sustainable balance. Perhaps simply a growing capacity to notice, in real time, when you are performing rather than genuinely expressing yourself, and choosing, increasingly, to interrupt that performance in favor of more honest, authentic expression. Consider, too, what specific role continued learning and reflection might play in your ongoing relationship with your own soul's needs, since this kind of internal awareness, like most valuable capacities, typically deepens through continued practice and reflection rather than remaining static from wherever your current level of understanding currently stands. This does not require extensive formal study. It might simply mean continuing to notice and name whatever internal signals arise, treating each instance as an opportunity for deeper understanding rather than assuming complete understanding has already been achieved through this single reflection alone. Examine what specific conversations you might need to have with people close to you as this process continues unfolding, whether a partner, family member, or friend whose understanding and support would genuinely help sustain your continued attention to this particular internal process. These conversations, while sometimes genuinely vulnerable to initiate, often prove considerably less difficult in actual practice than the anticipatory hesitation beforehand typically suggests they will be, particularly when approached with genuine honesty rather than excessive apology or minimization of your own genuine needs. Consider what specific boundaries might need to be established or reinforced as you continue honoring your soul's genuine needs, recognizing that attending more fully to internal, essential needs sometimes requires saying no to external demands that would otherwise continue crowding out this kind of essential attention. This does not mean abandoning all responsibility or obligation. It means examining honestly which specific demands genuinely deserve your continued priority, and which might reasonably be released, reduced, or renegotiated in service of the deeper attention this reflection has been encouraging throughout its content. Reflect, too, on what specific self-talk patterns you want to consciously cultivate as you continue this particular journey, replacing whatever harsh, dismissive internal narrative may have previously accompanied your soul's genuine needs and longings with language that honors those needs as legitimate and worthy of genuine attention, rather than continuing to treat them as inconvenient interruptions to your more important external obligations and demands. Consider what it would mean to view this particular process as an ongoing relationship with your own deepest self, rather than a problem requiring one-time, complete resolution after which the matter becomes permanently settled and requires no further attention. Genuine soul-level attention, like any meaningful relationship, typically requires continued, sustained engagement and adjustment over time, rather than a single, complete solution that, once achieved, eliminates the need for any further engagement or ongoing awareness regarding your own deepest, evolving needs and longings. This message reached you today for a reason. Trust that. Carry it with you. And when you are ready, not before, not because anyone told you to, but when you are genuinely ready, take your next step. Deep down, you already know what that step is. Thank you for receiving this message today, for finally listening to this warning rather than allowing it to pass by unheeded. Be gentle with yourself as you continue attending to whatever your soul has been asking for, one honest, patient step at a time.